Some breaking football news for you. The German FA has decided following a board meeting that national coach Hansi Flick, as well as his two assistant coaches Marcus Sorgand and Danny Roll, are relieved from their duties with immediate effect.
This is the first time a German head coach has been fired.
Barcelona have reached a verbal agreement with Hansi Flick to become head coach.
Hansi Flick is set to become the new manager of FC Barcelona. So to understand why they hired him at all, let's get to know him a little bit better. Born in West Germany in 1965, Hansi got into football management just like many other managers in the past, by being a player first. After winning 4 Bundesliga titles with Bayern Munich, Flick traveled between a few other teams before becoming a player manager for FC Viktoria Bammental in 1996. There, he bounced between the 5th and 6th tiers of German football for a few years until he joined TSG Hoffenheim, where he saw the side promoted to the 3rd division in his first year. But then, after not experiencing promotion again for another 4 years with the club, Flick and Hoffenheim parted ways. I think it's at this point where we would see traditional coaches make a step to a big club where they can manage at a larger stage, but Flick instead decided to hone his abilities and understanding of the game as an assistant to other managers. That means for nearly a decade, Flick worked under some of the most prolific managers of all time, learning about football and figuring out the ways he wanted to and didn't want to play. While at RB Salzburg, Flick worked with Lothar Matthäus and Giovanni Trapattoni, where under the latter, he was able to witness Giovanni's defense-first approach and realize what he didn't want his football club to do, and perhaps build a type of game that could one day work under FC Barcelona. From there, he moved to the German national team, where he worked under Joachim Löw to see the German national team win the 2014 World Cup, and then from there, worked for the German FA as the sporting director, building a very impressive CV while he was at it and lining himself up for a very good job in the future, which would eventually come in 2019. I guess you could say Hansi had a little bit of an all-over-the-place career, jumping from assistant manager to sporting director to actual manager to playing manager. It's not at all the traditional pathway that we see a lot of managers take nowadays, especially right after their playing days. Xavi went right into managing. Pep Guardiola went right into managing. I don't think that inconsistency or divergence from the traditional was necessarily a bad thing for Flick, because the first time he had the chance to completely manage a team with real talent and resources, well, it was at Bayern Munich, and they won everything he could. However, he started there as an assistant as well. He joined Niko Kovac in 2019 from being the sporting director of the German FA, and then when Kovac was sacked in November, well, it was Hansi Flick's time as interim manager. In the past few years, we've seen a lot of interim managers stay longer than originally believed, but most of the time, they don't do incredibly well. Ralf Rangnick comes to mind immediately. That's because interim managers almost always don't have time to set up their tactics or build a squad or build a strong understanding of the way they want to play, so they kind of have to work with what they have. But Hansi Flick was the exception. Not only did Hansi already know all the German players in his squad, but all the other non-German players in that starting 11 were some of the best players in the world in those positions. He had Davies, Alaba, and Lewandowski at his disposal, and he took advantage. His management instilled a strict and aggressive pressing protocol that encouraged risk-taking and forced a high line that led to many goals conceded, but also led to a lot more goals scored. The team won a sextuple that year and would become one of the most prolific teams in recent history, with a lot of the thanks going to Hansi. The team was incredibly worked very hard but very well together, and we saw the best of Lewandowski, Davies, and Alaba in that situation, as well as a great Kimmich, a great older Boateng as well, and the team worked in a way it hasn't since he left, because he decided he wanted to leave when Bayern were at their best.
What everybody agree, including the players and the fans, is that Hansi Flick is being the perfect Bayern manager.
He wanted to follow in the footsteps of his predecessor, Joachim Löw, with the German national team. And from then on, well, the certainty and decisivity that man had at Bayern became something totally different, and he became someone I think a lot of Barcelona fans are worried they will see again. With the German national team, Flick had a lot of the exact same profiles and the same players, in fact, that he had at Bayern, but it still went disastrously wrong. After a decent run of form at the start of his tenure, Hansi seemed to elect a more pragmatic approach to his Germany, where he no longer strongly abided to the principles of his Bayern. Instead of adapting a back four with two very attacking fullbacks, he instead opted for a back three with Germany that didn't operate in the same way at all. Plus, he ran a weaker midfield defensively of Gundogan and Kimmich opposed to the Goretzka-Kimmich combination at Bayern. Not to mention not having the defensive support of Alphonso Davies to save you when you desperately need him. When Flick realized he couldn't play the exact same football with the German players, he modified his tactics and the team never really recovered from that. Now, you can't put all the blame on Flick because they did create a lot of chances in some games that they just didn't convert. We can put it down to luck, or the lack of profiles, or the lack of a confidence that Hansi had probably built in the Bayern dressing room, but whatever it was, his German national team was not the same animal. The German FA were generous and gave him a couple more months to try and figure out this team, put it together, put some form together, but Flick became the first German national team manager in history to be sacked after losing or drawing yet again to Japan in September 2023. But now, despite all of that relative failure, Hansi Flick is going to be the manager of FC Barcelona, and I think a lot of it has to do with the state of the club at the moment. This side is in a very chaotic state at the moment, and I believe if Xavi stayed, he would have had a very short leash from the fans, the media, and the management. Just look at this past season. Even though Xavi won the league with the side for the first time in years, by November, because the team was struggling, people were calling for Xavi to leave. Just imagine how short that leash would have been, or how quickly they would have called for that to happen if we walked into next season playing not great football. If Barcelona were to sack Xavi this upcoming November, the side would be in a very difficult position, with the coach having to fumble his way through it the way Hansi Flick had to figure it out for Bayern in 2019. Sure, it worked for him, but it hasn't worked the vast majority of the time replacing a manager during the season has ever happened. So I think replacing Xavi was the right thing to do, even if they didn't go about it in the correct way. So Hansi Flick is here, and because we have a new manager, I think he will have a little bit more room to experiment, to figure it out, and to struggle a little bit as they find a way to put the side together in a good way. And also, to be fair, there are a lot of profiles in this side that look very similar to the profiles in that Bayern Munich side that performed so well. Barcelona has a lot of fighters with Rafinha, Gavi, Fermin, and Araujo, plus the technicians of Frenkie de Jong, Pedri, and Gundogan, as well as the finishing and wing ability of Lewandowski and Lamine. So with the quality in the side, combined with some decent signings over the summer, maybe a loan move for Xavi Simons, Hansi Flick could have some very similar profiles and hopefully have a team performing at a similar level as that Bayern if they are able to apply good training techniques that the side hasn't had for a couple years. But for Laporta and the board, I think the most important thing to them is maintaining some sort of reputation for this side. Laporta has wanted to make waves all year to offset the impact that Mbappe is going to have on La Liga and Real Madrid. Leaving Xavi in as manager wasn't really going to do anything until later in the season if the team was performing very well. By bringing in Flick right now, they can fabricate excitement around the future of this side and what can happen next year, and I think that's good for us as fans. Sure, this could go horribly wrong, but this side has enough quality to even figure it out in dire situations, as we saw them almost scrape through against Real Madrid several times and against PSG. However, I'm even more excited to see his tactics come into play. With Xavi, he tried to play a more aggressive, pressing style, but he saw that the team was not in the position to play that way he wanted, especially without Busquets. And the squad just got further and further away from being able to do that over the year, as we lost Gavi and Balde, and with no one finishing at all. He adapted a pragmatic approach that honestly could have still won him a trophy or two should one or two decisions have gone a little bit differently. By bringing in Hansi Flick, Barcelona opens their squad up to a bit of a fresh technique, even if it's kind of similar to the ideal that Xavi had. He tried to play a high line this year, but they didn't create enough chances for that to work. Hansi Flick plays a high line, but they were able to create chances at Bayern to make that work. The German has a lot of time to develop this team into the side he wants, for making a couple new signings, as well as just creating a training development program that works a little bit better with the way he wants to play, because it is a very intense way to play, and this team might not be set up to be so good at that, especially with how many injuries they've had. If they can create a deeper squad and more confidence in that tactic, in the way they play, that creates a little bit of excitement about the future, and I think that matters a lot more to Laporta, combined with the desire that Hansi has to coach this side. He's pushed off a lot of other jobs to hop into this Barcelona job, and it gives a lot of hope to us fans. This guy wants to succeed here, as I'm sure every coach does, but he held off some other opportunities to be here, and so I think he deserves credit for doing that. To give a little bit of a preview for the season, I think Gundogan, Ter Stegen, and Lewandowski are going to have huge impacts on the way this side works for the first few months. I don't think Gundogan should really play very much because the way we've seen him perform under Flick in the past, well, hasn't been great, especially in that double pivot that he likes to play with the 4-2-3-1. If he is playing further up the pitch, that could be a little bit different, but I think for the first few months, he's going to have a very strong role because Flick doesn't really know Spanish, and I think he only has relationship with those players. He's going to really hold on to that and build off of that to grow the understanding of this side. I think Xavi Simons is coming. I think Nico Williams will come as well, especially considering how much Flick cares about having wingers. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. I think Hansi Flick could be really good. I think it could also go badly, but at least there's something to be excited about. But thank you for watching. If you guys want to check out the shirt I'm wearing, it's at roludesigns.com. I'm wearing an XL. I'd probably go with a large. I usually wear mediums in kits that are kind of tight, but I'm between a medium and large for some sizing advice for you guys. So check it out at Rolu Designs. I also have a Pedri and a Kubarsi shirt. But thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this one, go check out my player ratings for the entire season for Barcelona, or check out this video about whatever YouTube thinks you'll be interested in. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.